In the quiet land near the edge of the wild plains, there lived a farmer named Eli. He was a shy man who kept to himself in his work. His days were full of planting seeds, watering crops, and caring for the small animals on his farm. Eli's life was simple, and he rarely spoke to anyone outside the nearby village. Eli's farm was modest, with a small wooden house, a few fields, and a fence that marked his land. The nearest neighbors were the Apache people, who lived in the hills not far from the farm. They had their own way of life, very different from Eli's quiet world, and he rarely crossed paths with them. One afternoon, as the sun hung low in the sky, Eli was fixing the old wooden fence when he heard soft footsteps behind him. He turned slowly and saw a woman standing there. Her skin was the color of warm earth, her eyes bright and full of life. She wore simple clothes made from animal skins and carried a small bundle. The woman looked at Eli with confidence and spoke clearly. "I want a child from you," she said without hesitation. Eli was taken by surprise. For a moment, he could not find his voice. He was shy and not used to such bold words, especially from a stranger who was different from anyone he had ever known. Her name was Nayeli, and she was a strong Apache woman. She had come to Eli's farm alone, leaving behind her tribe. Nayeli believed in something important, a future where two different worlds could come together through the bond of a child. She saw in Eli not just a farmer, but a man who could help build that future. Eli's mind raced with questions, fear mixed with curiosity, and a strange hope filled his heart. He thought about the stories he had heard about the Apache people, stories that spoke of bravery, deep connection to the land, and strength in family. But he also thought about the village's rules and the people's judgment. Nayeli waited patiently, watching Eli's face. She did not try to change him by force, but offered him a chance to see the world differently. In her eyes, Eli saw something new, a future filled with purpose beyond the work of planting and harvesting. She wanted him to be part of a story bigger than either of them. Slowly, words began to return to Eli. He asked Nayeli why she chose him, a quiet man with a simple life. Nayeli smiled and said, "Because you are gentle, and because you live close to the land. Our child will carry the strength of the earth and the spirit of both our peoples." Her words were soft yet full of belief. Days passed, and Eli found himself thinking about Nayeli's visit. He walked his farm with new eyes, feeling the wind and earth speak to him in ways he never noticed before. The maize in the fields seemed to grow taller, the animals looked at him with trust, and even the sky seemed wider and full of promise. Nayeli returned one morning, this time with a quiet warmth in her smile. She spoke of the seasons and how children are like the crops, needing care and patience but bringing joy beyond measure. Eli listened closely, his heart opening with each word. He realized that this meeting was not by chance but fate. The story of Eli and Nayeli was just beginning. In the silence of the land and the whisper of the wind, two strangers from different worlds had met, bringing hope for a child who would unite them. The shy farmer who once kept to himself now felt the stirrings of a brave new journey, one that would change his life forever. In the quiet dawn, the shy farmer Eli stood by his wooden fence, watching the light stretch slowly across the plains. The air was cool, carrying the scent of earth and growing crops. As the world around him began to wake, Eli's mind was full of thoughts about Nayeli's visit. Her bold words echoed in his heart, stirring feelings he had never known. Nayeli had disappeared as quietly as she had appeared, leaving Eli to wonder who she really was and what the future might hold if he listened to her. For years, Eli had lived alone with simple duties, avoiding the villages and the tribes nearby. But now, a new chapter was quietly beginning, perhaps in the shape of a child he could one day call his own. 2 weeks later, Eli was working the soil when he saw movement near the edge of the forest. It was Nayeli returning, her footsteps sure and steady. Her eyes held a softness that made Eli's chest tighten. She carried a small basket filled with wild herbs and roots, a gift from her people for healing and strength. "May I come inside?" Nayeli asked, her voice calm but filled with warmth. Eli nodded, stepping aside to let her enter the small, weathered house. The walls were plain, but the place carried a quiet peace Eli had always valued. They sat down near the fire, and Nayeli placed her basket gently on the wooden table. She spoke about the Apache tribe, describing how they lived close to the land, their respect for nature, and the deep bonds between families. Nayeli's words painted a picture of a world full of stories and wisdom, a world Eli longed to understand but had never dared to explore. Eli listened closely, feeling connected to something larger than himself. Nayeli shared a story about a child who was born between two worlds. A story passed down through generations. This child was said to carry the strength of both their parents. Able to bring peace where there was conflict, the story touched Eli deeply. And he realized the child she wanted was not just about family, but about hope for the future. Over the following days, Eli and Nayeli spent more time together, sharing simple meals and stories by the fire. Eli showed Nayeli how he planted seeds and cared for the land, while Nayeli taught Eli about the plants for healing and the stars that guided her people. Their worlds began to blend, and Eli's shyness softened in the light of Nayeli's presence. However, not everyone around them shared their hope. Rumors began to spread in the village about Eli's strange visitor. Some looked at him with suspicion, while others whispered about the danger of mixing with the Apache. Eli felt the weight of judgment but found courage in Nayeli's strength. She reminded him that love often meant standing against fear. Nayeli's tribe, too, had their doubts. The elders questioned her choice, worried that Eli's quiet life was too small a world for her, and that their child might struggle between two identities. Nayeli faced these challenges with quiet confidence. Determined to create a path for her child and Eli to walk together, her courage inspired Eli, teaching him to face his fears. One evening, as the sun set the sky on fire, Eli and Nayeli sat outside, looking at the horizon where their homes met. Eli took Nayeli's hand and felt the promise of their shared future. "I want to try," Eli said softly. "For the child? For us?" Nayeli smiled, knowing that this simple moment was the start of something powerful, something neither had imagined before. Their days were now filled with gentle plans for the future. As they dreamed of a child who would carry their love and bravery, Eli, once shy and alone, was becoming part of a story far greater than any he had told himself before. Together they were building a bridge between two lives, two cultures, and a new kind of family. After many days of growing closeness, Eli began to understand more about Nayeli's life and the world she had come from. The Apache people lived in harmony with the land, but their ways were different from the steady farming Eli had known. They were hunters and gatherers who moved with the seasons, gathering wild plants and hunting animals to feed their families. Nayeli explained how her people survived in the harsh lands, traveling from place to place, setting up camps with tipis made from animal hides. Their lives were built on knowledge passed down for generations about plants that could nourish or heal, about the stars that guided them at night, and about the cycles of nature that told them when to move or gather. She told Eli about the women who gathered yucca and mescal plants, how they would steam these plants in fires made from hot stones covered in grass, creating food that could last for months. The Apache also harvested berries, nuts, and roots, learning to use every part of the land's gifts. Their survival depended on respect for the earth, not just taking from it, but living as part of it. Eli listened carefully, realizing how this knowledge was different from his farming, but shared the same deep respect for nature. He told Nayeli about planting seeds in rows, of watering carefully and waiting months for the plants to grow tall and strong. He spoke of the long days working the soil and the quiet satisfaction of harvest time. Though different, their lives were connected by the rhythms of the earth, and this shared respect built a bridge between them. Nayeli's stories brought warmth and color to the small farmhouse, showing Eli that life was larger than he had imagined, full of movement, mystery, and meaning that went beyond the village boundaries. But their growing friendship was not without its challenges. The village where Eli lived held strong opinions about the Apache. Many people feared and misunderstood them, believing old stories that painted the tribe as wild or dangerous. Eli could feel the eyes of neighbors lingering with suspicion. whispering doubts about his strange new companion. Even more difficult were Naeli's challenges within her own tribe. The elders worried about her choosing a quiet farmer from another world, a man who did not run with the horses or live their nomadic life. They asked how she could be sure their child would belong in either world, or if the child would be lost between two homes. Naeli faced these doubts with courage and patience. She believed that their child could carry the strengths of both families. Learning to walk between two worlds with honor and love, her faith in this future gave Eli strength, teaching him that love was sometimes about standing firm when others would turn away. One evening, under a wide sky filled with stars, Naeli showed Eli the constellations her people followed. Telling him stories about the stars' meanings and their lessons, this moment felt sacred, as if the universe was blessing their bond and the new life they hoped to create. Eli reached for Naeli's hand, feeling the promise of hope and courage grow between them. Their conversations deepened, revealing fears and dreams that Eli had long kept hidden. Naeli spoke of the beauty and the pain of being different, of living on the edge of two worlds yet belonging to both. Eli shared his desire for connection, a family, a purpose beyond the quiet days of farming alone. Together, they began to imagine a future where their child would grow surrounded by both stories and ways of life, where the child could play under the open sky with lessons from two cultures, learning strength from the Apache courage and patience from the farmer's steady hands. This vision made the impossible feel real. As the land around them changed with the seasons, so too did Eli and Naeli's bond. The shy farmer was becoming a man who could face the world with new eyes, not alone but alongside the woman who had changed his heart. Their love was gentle but fierce, a quiet rebellion against fear and separation. Naeli planted seeds of her own by the farmhouse, small patches of wild herbs and squash, teaching Eli how to tend them. This blending of their worlds was a symbol, showing how two different lives could grow together in care and respect. Eli watched the small plants push through the soil and felt a connection to life deeper than he ever had. Though challenges waited, Eli and Naeli held on to their hope. Their story was far from over, but with every shared word an act of trust. They were writing a new beginning, one that would carry their love forward in a child who would one day walk with the strength and spirit of two worlds. The farmer Eli now stood at the edge of his land, looking out across the hills where the Apache camps moved like shadows beneath the trees. He knew that Naeli's people had lived here for generations, mastering the harsh land with skill and care, but he also understood how different their lives were from his own quiet farm. Naeli had taught him much about her people's ways, how they hunted and gathered, moving with the seasons to places where food was plentiful. Unlike the steady rows of corn Eli planted, the Apache relied on wild plants, roots, and animals that could be caught or found in the deserts and forests. It amazed Eli how the Apache women gathered yucca and mescal plants, steaming them in fires made from hot stones, creating food that could last through cold seasons. They wove baskets from willow and yucca leaves, carrying all their belongings carefully as they moved. Each plant and animal was valuable, used fully to survive in the wild lands. Eli felt a deep respect for Naeli's strength, and for the connection her people had to the earth, but still he wondered how their lives could come together. He was a farmer rooted in one place, while Naeli's people traveled and followed the land's rhythms. Were they too different to join as one? The question troubled Eli, yet he also knew the answer was not simple. Naeli's courage and belief in their future gave him hope, and he was learning from her how love could cross boundaries and fears. But he also felt the weight of the village's judgment. Their suspicion of the Apache was strong, and Eli could feel the cold looks and harsh words when they saw him with Naeli. One afternoon, as Eli worked the fields, a small group of villagers gathered near the fence. Whispering loudly, their voices carried suspicion and harshness, warning Eli to stay away from the Apache woman. To many, Naeli was an outsider, someone to fear or avoid. Not a partner to trust or love. Eli's heart felt heavy, but Naeli was by his side, calm and steady. She reminded him that love was stronger than fear, that the future they dreamed of could be built only if they were brave enough to face the challenges. Their bond was not just for themselves, but for the child they hoped to have. A symbol of hope for two worlds to come together. Meanwhile, Nayeli faced her own struggles within her tribe. The elders questioned her decision to be with a farmer who did not share their nomadic ways, who lived a life so different from their traditions. They worried about the child, wondering if it could belong in either world, or if it might lose itself between two identities. Nayeli listened with respect but held firm to her belief. She knew that blending their lives would not be easy, but she trusted that their child could carry the best of both worlds, learning strength from the Apache spirit and patience from the farmer's steady hands. She was ready to face the judgments and fears, to protect what they were building together at night under the wide sky. Eli and Nayeli would sit by the fire sharing stories and dreams. Nayeli told of the stars and the seasons, of the sacred lands and the wisdom of her people. Eli shared his hopes for a family, a new beginning far beyond the quiet life he had known. Their voices blended like the wind that carried the scents of earth and fire, promising a future full of possibility. One evening, Eli took Nayeli's hands in his and spoke softly. "I want to be brave. For you and for our child," he said, "though I am shy. I will face the world with you." Nayeli smiled, her eyes shining with gratitude and love. "Together we are stronger," she replied. "Our child will carry that strength always." They began to prepare for the child's arrival, planting seeds and gathering herbs, blending the gifts of their two worlds into the farm and kitchen. Nayeli's hands worked the soil beside Eli's, learning not just to live on the land, but to make it part of their shared story. Every small act held meaning, a step towards belonging and hope. Though the path was still uncertain, Eli and Nayeli knew they were not alone. Their love was a quiet rebellion against fear, a powerful promise of unity. They held fast to their vision of a family that could heal old wounds, bridge divided worlds, and light a way forward for the child who would come. Their story was just beginning, but already it carried the weight and wonder of new life, of courage born from love, and the endless possibilities that come when two hearts choose to grow together. As the seasons changed, Eli and Nayeli's relationship grew stronger, bound by trust and the hope of the child they were creating together. Eli learned more about the Apache way of life, how the tribe's survival depended on a deep knowledge of the land that was both wild and generous. The Apache were masters of living lightly on the earth, moving with the seasons to find food from hunting, gathering, and some farming. Nayeli shared how her people hunted deer, elk, and buffalo with bows and arrows, sometimes organizing hunts together to bring down the largest game. Their skill helped feed families spread across the land, while the women gathered berries, nuts, and plants like agave and mezcal to supplement their diet. Their lives were active and closely tied to the land's rhythms, not unlike Eli's but far freer and more fluid. Though historically the Apache were known as nomadic, some groups practiced limited farming, growing corn, beans, and squash, balancing the demands of moving camps with the need to shape the earth for food. Eli realized that this mix of survival skills was a testament to the tribe's strength and adaptability. It showed how different lives could come together in shared respect for nature. Even if the ways were not the same, Eli himself began to adopt some of Nayeli's ways, learning which herbs could heal wounds or ease pain, trying his hand at gathering wild nuts and berries with her help. The shy farmer started to see the land not just as soil to be farmed, but as a living part of a story much larger than the seasons alone, a world of sacred knowledge and ancient connection. Nayeli, in turn, found comfort in Eli's steady hands and quiet spirit, discovering that farming required patience and care like no other task. Unlike the fast pace of the hunt and camp, it needed slow work day by day tending, watering, waiting for seeds to turn green. She admired Eli's dedication, understanding that this patience was a different kind of strength. Their love for one another grew quietly but firmly, like a strong root growing beneath the surface before the first bloom. Despite the challenges from their communities, they found peace together in the shared work and quiet moments, knowing that the child they awaited would be a bridge between two worlds, wild and tamed, free and settled, ancient and new. At the village, suspicion had not faded, but Eli stood taller. Filled with the courage Nayeli inspired, he faced uncomfortable questions and cold looks with soft answers and gentle respect. Slowly, some villagers began to see the change in him, a man transformed by love and hope for his family. Though many still whispered, Eli chose to walk with pride. Nayeli's tribe also watched her choices with careful eyes. The elders' doubts remained, but many in the younger generation admired her courage. Seeing the possibility of a new way to live, a blending of traditions that could strengthen their people in changing times, Nayeli became a quiet leader, respected for her bravery in crossing boundaries that none before dared. Together, Eli and Nayeli prepared for the child who would carry their hopes and stories forward. They built a small garden with mixed seeds, corn from Eli's farm and wild herbs from Nayeli's basket. This garden was a symbol of their union, a place where two cultures dug deep roots side by side, nurturing life with hands that learned from one another. One night, while sitting under the stars, Nayeli spoke softly to Eli about the child. "Our child will walk with the strength of the earth beneath their feet and the spirit of the sky above. They will know both stories, the soft soil of your farm and the wild wind of my people. We will teach them to carry both with pride, learning from the past and making a new path." Eli looked up at the sky, feeling the weight and lightness of her words together. He knew their love was not just about them, but about creating a future where differences were gifts, not barriers, and in that future, he believed they could build a family that would shine a light for both the village and the tribe. Their journey was still full of unknowns, but for the first time, Eli felt ready. No longer a shy farmer alone, but a partner in a story bigger than he could imagine, with Nayeli's hand in his. He was learning to be strong, to be brave, and to love without limits. The child they awaited gave them a reason to hope, to dream, and to face the future together. The journey of Eli and Nayeli was growing more difficult, but their determination was strong. Together, they faced opposition from the village and from Nayeli's tribe, but they found ways to keep their bond alive. The shy farmer was no longer just a quiet man on his land. He was becoming a man with courage to stand for love and family. The Apache people lived freely in the wide lands, but they faced their own struggles. Some viewed change with fear, and many held tight to ancient ways. Nayeli understood these feelings, but also knew that the world was changing fast. The land where they lived was no longer as safe, as wild as it once was, and survival meant adapting. Eli and Nayeli learned from these challenges, often speaking quietly under the stars, planning how they could face the doubts and fears together. They knew their love was a bridge between two very different worlds. But bridges need strong beams to hold the weight, and they would build theirs one steady step at a time. One harsh truth they faced was the pressure from the local settlers who wanted more land and feared the Apache's presence. The village was growing, and more newcomers arrived with their own ways, new rules and little understanding of the old paths. These changes brought tension and sometimes fear, threatening to pull families apart. Nayeli's tribe felt this pressure deeply. Forced onto smaller lands and pushed by new laws, the Apache's ability to roam freely was limited, and farming became more common as part of survival and government demands. These changes were hard, but also brought new skills and hope, a hope that families like Nayeli's could continue. Even in new ways, Eli stood by Nayeli during these hard times. Learning patience and strength, he saw her courage not as reckless, but as needed to protect their future. They began to prepare their home not just as a farm, but as a safe place for their family, planting crops, making shelter, and teaching each other new skills. Slowly, their small garden grew, with corn, squash, and beans planted in neat rows alongside wild herbs Nayeli brought from her tribe. This garden was a symbol of their union. a living proof that two different lives could come together to create something new and beautiful. Eli was proud of their work and the life they were building. Yet the doubt and fear of others did not disappear. Rumors in the village invited hostility, and Nayeli sometimes felt the coldness of those who could not accept difference. Despite this, she never wavered, teaching Eli about the strength that comes from standing firm in love and truth. She became a leader not just in her tribe, but among those who saw the power of hope. One night, as the winds whispered through the trees, Eli and Nayeli sat near the fire, planning for their child's future. They spoke of the gifts the child would carry, stories of mountain and plain, river and desert, lessons from Apache courage and farmer's patience. Their words shaped a promise, a path of love and respect to guide the child's steps. Eli took Nayeli's hand and said, "We will face whatever comes together. This child will be a light in the dark, a bridge between worlds." Nayeli smiled, her eyes steady and shining. "Yes, and this light will shine for those who come after us too," showing that fear does not have to win. In the quiet moments beside the growing garden, Eli and Nayeli found peace. Their love was gentle and strong. Like roots growing deep beneath the soil, the child they hoped for was a dream shared with the earth itself, a living symbol of their courage and dreams. Their story was no longer just about two people, but about hope, unity, and the power of love to change the world. Together they stood ready to face every challenge, knowing that love, like the land, could be tended and made to grow even in harsh times. The day finally came when Nayeli's belly grew round with the child they had dreamed of together. This child was more than a gift. It was a symbol of their love and a hope for the future. Eli walked with a new kind of pride, feeling the strength of a father growing inside him even before the child was born. Life on the farm changed in small but beautiful ways. Nayeli sang old Apache songs while preparing the simple meals, and Eli tended the garden with more care than ever before. Their hands worked together, planting seeds and healing herbs, teaching the land to hold their story in its soil. The village around them whispered still, but Eli and Nayeli stood taller, their bond a quiet declaration of a love that refused to be broken by fear or misunderstanding. Nayeli's tribe watched anxiously, some with doubt, but many with respect for her courage, knowing this child belonged to the future, not just to old worries. One bright morning, under the soft light of early spring, Nayeli went into labor. The pain and joy of birth filled the small home, where Eli held her hand and whispered words of love and strength. After hours that felt like days, their child came into the world, a small, crying life carrying the hope of two worlds. They named the child Tayanita, meaning youngest in the Apache tongue, a name full of promise and connection, one that carried the strength of the earth and sky, the hopes of a mother and the steady hands of a father. Tayanita was gentle yet strong, a child born of courage and love. As Tayanita grew, she learned the stories of both her parents, the warmth of the farm's sun and the wild freedom of the Apache lands. Nayeli taught her the songs and dances of the tribe, while Eli showed her how to plant seeds and care for the growing garden. Their child lived in two worlds and belonged fully to both. The garden became a place of learning and peace, where neighbors sometimes stopped, curious and watching, slowly coming to see the beauty of this life shared between cultures. Tayanita was a bridge who brought smiles and softened hearts. Even those who had doubted now found reasons to hope. Nayeli and Eli faced challenges, but their love gave them strength. The village and tribe were different, but together they showed that family could be bigger than old fears. They taught Tayanita to be proud of her heritage and brave in her heart, a child who could walk between worlds. Carrying the stories forward, years passed, and Tayanita became a young girl full of laughter and light. Her life was a dance between the lessons of both parents, the steady rhythm of the farm and the wild song of the Apache. She dreamed of the future, knowing she was loved by two worlds. Strong because of both, Eli, once a shy farmer, had grown into a man full of courage and love. Nayeli, strong and brave, had created a family that was a living hope. Together they showed that the future could be built from respect, trust, and the quiet power of love. Asterisk years passed, and the child, Tayanita, grew with a bright spirit and steady courage. She carried both her parents' worlds inside her, a life tied to the slow, patient farming of Eli and the wild, free spirit of Naheli's Apache people. The two ways of living blended in her, a living proof that love could weave two lives into one. Eli watched with pride as Tayanita ran through the fields and the hills. Her laughter a soft song on the wind, Nayeli taught her the ancient songs and dances, the stories of the stars and the land that made her people strong. They raised her with hope, patience, and the belief that she could be a light for others. The village and the tribe slowly began to change their views. Seeing the strength in the family that Eli and Nayeli had built, many started to accept that love and family could cross old boundaries, that differences could become bridges, not walls. Tayanita became a symbol of this new future, a living connection between two worlds. Eli was no longer the shy farmer who kept to himself. He had grown into a man of courage. Standing beside Nayeli as an equal partner in life and in love, their family was a quiet rebellion against fear, proof that trust and respect could change the hardest hearts. Together they were shaping a story far bigger than their own lives. Nayeli was proud of what they had built, a strong woman who had not only changed her own life but helped heal old wounds between communities. Her bravery and kindness were an example to others who feared change or difference. She had shown that strength could be found in love and unity. The garden they planted grew alongside their family, flourishing with the mix of crops from both traditions: corn, beans and squash, wild herbs and healing plants. The earth held their stories in the roots and leaves, a gift from the land that had seen hardship but also hope. Tayanita learned to walk with two stories in her heart. She grew wise in the ways of her people, learning respect for the earth, bravery in the face of danger, and the power of kindness. Her parents' love had given her strength to be proud of who she was. A child of two worlds, brave and free, their story lived on as a promise, a testament to the power of love to break barriers, to the quiet courage found in the shy farmer and the bold Apache woman, and to the hope carried forth by their child. This story spoke not just of one family, but of many who seek to build bridges and grow new soil from old fears. In the years to come, the land around them would change once more. But Eli, Nayeli, and Tayanita knew this love, respect, and hope could outlast the hardest storms. They had discovered that when two hearts choose to walk together, the future becomes wide and bright, full of endless possibility. And so, the shy farmer, the Apache woman, and their child walked forward into a new dawn, their lives a quiet song of hope, love, and the unbreakable bonds that hold us all, even as worlds shift and change.